Let's review rounding with decimals. When we're rounding, we always want to look to a certain place value that'll be identified for us, and then determine, based on the digit after that, are we going to round it up, or is that digit going to stay the same and everything else will drop off? So when we look at this, numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the smaller half of this wheel from 0 to 4, all of those digits will stay the same, or make the digit to the left of it stay the same. While the rest drop off. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 stay the same. But if the numbers 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 follow the place value we're looking at, those digits will round up one place value, and then the rest will drop off. So let's practice this a little bit. You'll see two different numbers here, and we're rounding them to different place values all the way down. If we look at the hundredths place for this first number, the hundredths place is the 6. The 6 is in the hundredths place, meaning that we have to look to the digit after the 6 to determine what's going to happen. If the hundredths place is the place value that we're rounding to, that means it's also going to be the last place value in our rounded answer. Nothing after those two digits, because the 6 is in the hundredths place. The 4 is on that smaller half of digits up here, so it's going to say, well, the 6 is staying the same, and then all of these will drop off. So our rounded value is going to be 542 and 26 hundredths. If we again round to the hundredths place for this number, 410 with our decimal, the hundredths place is the 7. So that means after rounding, nothing will go after that 7 because the 7 is in the hundredths place. Again, the 4 is saying stay the same because it's on the smaller half. So our rounded answer is 410 and 7 hundredths. If we take those same numbers and round them to the tenths place, it's always helpful to underline the digit that you're rounding to. So in this place, we're rounding to the tenths place. That's the 2. So that's going to be the last digit that we keep, and the 6 is going to determine what happens to the 2. Only the 6. None of these digits matter. The 6 is right next door after the place value that we're rounding to. The 6 is on the higher end, so it's going to round that 2 up to a 3. And then the 6 will drop off. Again, we were rounding to the tens place, so the tens place is the last digit in our answer. If we do that for this next one again, the tens place is the 0. The 7 afterwards is going to determine the 403 we don't need to worry about. The 7 again is going to round up that 0. Those first 3 digits stay the same. They are unaffected. Only the tenths place digit will change. And the 7 rounds it up to a 1. And then we no longer need that 7 because we were rounding to the tenths place. The tenths digit should be the last one shown. If we round it to the thousandths place, that's going to be way out here. Again, helpful to write the digit down. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths place. So the 3 is going to determine what happens to the 4. The 3 is not enough to round it up, so we just drop off and write our new number. Again, because we were rounding to the thousands place, the 4, our last digit, should be in the thousands place, which it is. If we look at this one in the thousands place, this is the tenths, hundredths, thousandths place, the 4 is in the thousandths place. The 0 is not enough to round it up, so it drops off, and the rest of the digits stay the same, 410 and 74 thousandths. You'll notice here that we're switching from the th sounds at the end to ones and tens. So we're rounding to decimal places, and then here we're rounding to whole number places. So we want to be careful with that as well, because up here, every time after we rounded, whether it was rounding the number up or keeping it the same, we would just drop off the digits that we no longer needed after this place value. Really, in a way, that's writing them as a 0. If we write them as a 0, it doesn't change that value, because it's not adding anything to the right of that decimal. However, when we're going to the ones and the tens place, that's the whole number. And if we round it off, then it becomes a much, much smaller whole number, and we don't want that. So let's show that up here in the ones place. Again, we're starting with that decimal written completely out. The ones place is this 2. So again, just like before, we look to the digit to the right, and that 2 is going to determine what we do. The 2 is not enough to round it up, so this is all going to drop off or become zeros. And having zeros to the right of the decimal doesn't add any additional value. So 542 is our final answer. 2 is our last digit. It's in the ones place, so that would be our answer. Do the same thing for this number. Our ones place is this 0, and 0 to the right of it is going to determine what happens. It's not enough to round it up, so we don't need them. In a way, they turn to zeros. Zeros to the right of the decimal don't add any additional value, so 410 is our answer. The tens place, that's where it gets a little tricky. Okay, in this one, the 4 is in the tens place. It has to remain in the tens place, meaning the second digit to the left of the decimal. We still look to the right, so this 2 is going to determine what happens to that 4. The 2 is not enough to round it up because it's in our whole number portion and not to the right. So all of these digits to the right of the decimal, they will drop off, like they're becoming zeros. And because they're to the right of the decimal, we don't have to write them. However, this 2, it wasn't enough to round up the 4, so it would also become a 0. And because it is to the left of the decimal, we have to keep that digit there because it's holding that 4 in the tens place. And if we're rounding to the tens place, that 4 has to stay in the tens place. If we round 542 about to the tens place, we would not get 54. It's 542. The 4 is in the tens place. It has to stay in the tens place, meaning we need to have that 0 there. So we want to be really careful when we're rounding to the tens place and above that we keep zeros that we need to the left of the decimal. Same thing here. This 1 is in the tens place. The 0 is going to determine what happens. It's not enough to round it up, so it would stay a 0, and everything else afterwards would also become zeros. In this case, when it stays a 0, we still have to write it because it's to the left of the decimal. Each of these zeros we don't need. They don't add any additional value. You could write them. It's the same thing, but we don't need them. However, this 0 is needed because it holds the 1 in the tens place and the 4 in the hundreds place. So 410 would be your answer. To review, when we are rounding, we want to underline the place value that we are rounding to. When we are rounding to that place value, that is the last place value in our final answer. Either everything else becomes 0 or it drops off depending on what place value we're rounding to. If it's to the tens place, hundreds place, any of those higher place values, tens and above, then we have to be careful to keep zeros to the left of the decimal to hold that place value. So that is rounding with decimals.